the blatant discard for the health of people, the blatant just sort of austerity and neoliberalism attacks that's going on here, the privatization, et cetera, which is going to end up costing billions of dollars to fix. Another thing you reported about a couple weeks ago is that Governor Snyder has made requests for taxpayer dollars for various legal fees involving Flint. So tell us a bit about that.
Right. So it's probably not surprising that there are a number of lawsuits right now, and I think the number keeps growing as more lawsuits are started and added over what happened to residents in Flint. They're suing the state as well as other agencies, the federal government, the local government, over the lack of action, over the damage caused to their property, over the fact that they were paying the highest water rates in the country for this water that was poisoned, so they want to be reimbursed, medical costs, educational costs, etc. So Snyder himself is the target of many of these lawsuits. And it came out a couple of weeks ago that he has requested that the state pay private lawyers that he has recruited to help him deal with these lawsuits. He wants to pay them as much as $1.2 million with state money. In the wake of that, Progress Michigan, which is a progressive group in the state, they've been really sort of active on the Flint issue, is now, they filed a legal complaint against him, claiming that this is against state law, that he cannot actually ask the state to pay for this. Instead, what he should be doing is raising private funds, and also is required to be transparent about where those funds come from to pay for his own legal defense. I have not heard an update as to where that is. I'm sure it's sort of winding its way through the system. But I do think even if the question of whether or not it's illegal is being debated, the fact that he wants to use over $1 million of state money for his own legal defense when the city of Flint needs millions of dollars to replace its lead pipes is just, it seems like a bad use of state money.
Well, also considering the fact that he's I think his net worth is somewhere around $200 million. The man's not like, poor or anything like that. One thing I also found really interesting is when you have these conservative politicians, cutting money. And one of the reasons they said that they were switching over to the Flint River, it's like, oh, we're going to save so much money by switching over to this polluted river here. Is that, it's all about saving money. We have to tighten our belts, make the tough choices. But Governor Snyder, at least in some of the lawyers that he's hiring, you report that their hourly rate is much, much higher than the average hourly rate of lawyers in Michigan, correct?
Right. Yeah, they are getting the highest rate being charged by the lawyers that he's grouped together is $540 an hour. Three others would be paid $400 an hour. The median billing rate in the state is $245 an hour. So these are not, affordable attorneys. These are sort of expensive attorneys. And you're right. I mean, he's a wealthy man. He comes from a business background. Before being governor of Michigan, he was all his experiences in the private sector. He ran on, his Twitter handle is One Tough Nerd. He ran on being an accountant and sort of, bringing this fiscal discipline. And I do think there are people who feel like asking the state to pony up money for your own legal defense is not a good example of fiscal discipline with government money.
Yeah. Well, it's just so also an important lesson to think about where more just like the cost of all of these policies, not just on the people who these horrible policies affect, but it actually ends up affecting, it affects the people in Flint, obviously, but it also affects the entire state because the entire state is actually paying for these horrible policies. It's everybody's tax money that's going to pay for these awful choices that these horrible right-wing governors and right-wing politicians and right-wing city managers, unelected city managers ultimately made. It's, obviously the people that affects it the most are the people who are literally got poisoned, but it's something that actually affects, everybody there. And, also, you know, every taxpayer in the U.S. somehow, you know, it's where the money is actually coming from. But this is something that, you know, when these policies happen and their lawsuits are actually being paid out, we're all actually paying for this through our taxpayer dollars.
Right. I mean, the problem with this, you know, business mindset, austerity mindset that most likely played a very big role in the decision to switch Flint's water source and to not use corrosion control chemicals, which would have protected the residents from lead poisoning from their pipes. All of that was done to save a buck in theory because, you know, Flint's finances have been in trouble for a while. But when you save a buck that way, the costs you incur down the road are just astronomical. I mean, as you're saying, you know, it's not just Snyder's legal defense. There's the cost of rebuilding the city's infrastructure. There's the medical system costs. There's the educational system costs, the incarceration costs that are almost certainly going to skyrocket when these children who have been poisoned and irreparably harmed become, you know, older young adults who struggle in many different ways. You know, their health care is going to be an immediate cost as well. That money will hopefully, I mean, we should do the right thing, and the federal government should give money to the city to help cover those costs. The state should be giving money to the city to help cover those costs. But it is true, we end up all shouldering that burden together when, you know, an emergency manager makes some cost-saving measure decision to not use chemicals that are now leading to widespread poisoning. So I do think it is a strong indictment of the austerity mindset that tries to cut money today and sort of shave these corners and can have such huge ramifications later.